Manifesto to Medicare to public ownership of business, Saskatchewan used to have a reputation as the birthplace of Canadian socialism. Now all that is changing. For the past 7 years, the Conservative government has been dismantling the network of crown corporations set up by previous CCF and NDP governments.
Premier Grant Devine has become a champion of privatization, selling off crown corporations and contracting out government services. He's taking a page out of Margaret Thatcher's book, even to the extent of hiring one of her British advisors. Sasha Petrusek of CBC Regina has a status report on what the Conservatives call the Saskatchewan Revolution.
Morning, everybody.
Saskatchewan Premier Grant Devine has become a man with a mission. His passion is privatization, and he says political parties which don't agree are destined to disappear.
Open up. What does it say? The decline.
Devine says he's just following a world trend.
I mean, if Mikhail Gorbachev was the premier of Saskatchewan, he'd be way out ahead of me.
In fact, though, when it comes to selling off crown corporations, Devine is way ahead of any other premier in Saskatchewan history, and these days, Saskatchewan is way ahead of any other province. It's put billions of dollars worth of assets on the auction block, thousands of jobs on the line, and it's made privatization the #1 topic of debate around the province, often at government-run public forums.
They are old ideas. They were thrown out in desperation in the 30s, and I would suggest, sir, that they might be thrown out again.
I am very, very upset and afraid our province is going to be sold out, and we will have nothing to say about our future products.
The people of Gravelbourg have already seen how privatization can hurt. A few years ago, the NDP government provided free dental care for children at school. Now, under the Conservatives, the program's been privatized, and there's no dentist in town.
I've lost my job.
In total, 170 dental therapists across Saskatchewan lost their jobs the day the program was privatized. Only a handful have found work since then. Elaine Bouvier has not.
I guess that I'm still, a little angry about what happened. I think it was not only morally wrong, but downright sneaky the way that it was done.
Privatization has forced towns like Gravelbourg to invest thousands of dollars in dental equipment, all in an effort to lure a dentist.
1080, please.
The local Economic Development Committee is spending its entire budget on the search. It's left the people here bitter about Devine's privatization plan.
Well, it's just something else taken away from us from the government again.
Well, Mayor Louis Draper is worried about what will happen next.
The services are being cut back steadily. Crown corporations are being sold off steadily. We just wonder how long we as a town and as a province can last the way things are going.
When it comes to privatization, Gravelbourg may have lost out. But at the other end of the province, in Prince Albert, things are very different. Here, the local pulp mill used to be owned by the provincial government. The losses were piling up faster than the sheets of pulp. Almost $100,000 a day. The mill was on the verge of closing. But 2 years ago, the Conservatives sold it to an American company, Weyerhaeuser. Workers like Gord Asmussen worried about a new owner who might not need all the old employees.
So far, they've done a real good job, like I said, and I had a few reservations to start with, but you just had to expect the worst, and then you get the best.
There's a new paper mill and almost 200 new jobs. An improved world market for pulp and paper has a lot to do with this success. But whatever the reason, it's left people in Prince Albert feeling good about privatization.
If someone can take something and make it work, if they can take something and turn it around, then I'm definitely all for it.
When the Conservative government sold this mill, it marked one of the most dramatic changes in ideology in Saskatchewan politics. Previous NDP governments had gained a national reputation for setting up crown corporations and buying out private enterprises, including this mill. The New Democrats were convinced it was the best way to keep control of Saskatchewan's economy and resources in Saskatchewan.
And we ought to be standing together against the corporate elite that have been picking the pockets of all of us.
It was the legacy of the dirty 30s. Tommy Douglas and the CCF were creating a whole new Saskatchewan. Douglas set up Crown corporations to create jobs and to provide services. Services like electricity, which many believed wouldn't have come as quickly without government ownership. Canada's first Medicare system also started in Saskatchewan. Later, NDP Premier Alan Blakeney created more Crown corporations to control Saskatchewan's natural resources. But 7 years ago, everything changed. Devine's Conservatives swept to power. The urge to nationalize became the urge to privatize. Since then, more than 125 Crown corporations and government services have been sold or contracted out. Government assets on the block, affecting 1 in 10 employees.
Why don't we wake up and smell the coffee?
Devine insists privatization is the only way the province can prosper.
What I see we can do with joint ventures with other people is build. Whether it's turbines, bacon plants, paper mills, manufacturing, processing, hospital beds, whatever it is. I don't have enough money in government to buy them all, but I have money to help build with them, and I will with the cooperative sector as well as the private sector.
And what Devine is doing here is a major revolution.
For provincial NDP leader Roy Romano, it's a change driven solely by ideology. He points out that despite all the sales, Saskatchewan's
we have a government which is so ideologically blinkered, a government which has stolen ideas which may be relevant in the United Kingdom, I'm not sure that they are, from Maggie Thatcher, and is applying them without thought as to the consequences, selling off the resources because ideologically they don't believe there's a role for government.
We Conservatives are returning power to the people.
It's not just Margaret Thatcher's ideas that are at work in Saskatchewan. Some of the same people who helped Thatcher privatize companies like British Airways, British Petroleum, and Jaguar are now plying their trade on the prairies. Meet Oliver Letwin, private enterprise crusader. He's the man known as Thatcher's privatization guru, the mastermind behind the sale of the British natural gas system. Letwin's advised governments around the world how to sell their assets. These days, he advises the government of Saskatchewan.
I'd like you all to welcome a person who is indeed involved in privatizing the world. I give you Dr. Oliver Letwin.
On this night, he was invited to speak by the University of Regina.
What I'm talking about is an abstract economic truth about investment and investment practices, not an ideological crusade.
They come here and they applied their British experience and they applied the British principles to a totally different set of circumstances, and in my judgment, the government has fouled it up totally.
Letwin insists he doesn't tell the government what to do, just how to go about it.
I think it would be a gross impertinence for outsiders in any country, and in general, in any event, for investment bankers to try and offer policy advice. Governments set policies, companies live with them. Both governments and companies, however, can benefit from financial advice.
Based on that advice, the Devine government created a whole new department, the Ministry of Public Participation. And in Saskatchewan, that means privatization.
And I think now that's something the public have to start to understand.
There's a senior cabinet minister in charge and a staff of 25, all of them true believers in privatization, many of them trained at universities around the world.
Good morning, can I help you?
On this morning, they're in Esterhazy, east of Regina. It's an elaborate traveling roadshow run by a professional public relations company. Glossy posters and slick information packages promote private investment as the way to economic prosperity.
Governments are sitting down and reassessing the way in which they deliver programs. In other words, there are many who are saying, well, what was right for the 40s or the 50s or the 60s and the 70s may not absolutely be the way we should be doing things today.
Public Participation Minister Graham Taylor is stumping around the province trying to change attitudes, and those who don't get the message in person get it on TV.
It means having a direct financial stake for Saskatchewan people while building a strong future for all of us.
The government spent millions of dollars on advertising, maybe as much as $20 million.
Public participation It's the Saskatchewan way.
Howard Leeson heads the political science department at the University of Regina. He says the minister has an unprecedented role in Saskatchewan politics.
He's kind of the commissar of privatization right now. He's the ideological minister, or the minister of ideology, I guess. If you can think of the previous government having a minister of nationalization, for example, would have been it's kind of shocking.
So far, the only organized resistance to privatization has come from Saskatchewan's unions. When they heard that some of the province's liquor stores were on the block, they launched a campaign of their own. Newspaper ads warned that private businessmen would do anything for a buck, like selling liquor to minors.
I resent being called a mindless bootlegger.
Store owners complained, and the ads were dropped. But the government didn't like the tone of the debate. It shelved its plans to privatize liquor stores, figuring better to wait out this storm than to risk giving its whole program a bad name. Still, union leaders like Barb Byers say the battle against privatization will continue.
So I'm angry, I'm saddened by it. I think what that does, though, is strengthen my resolve that we've got to continue this fight.
And lately, the struggle has intensified, partly because Devine decided to sell the natural gas company, one of Tommy Douglas's original utilities, and partly because Devine took aim at the jewel of the NDP Crown corporations, the potash mines. The Potash Corporation was once Premier Alan Blakeney's pride and joy, but today it has an $800 million debt. Devine wants to sell it, and he's found potential buyers in the Far East. For Alan Blakeney, it's an outrage.
Let's be very clear. Foreign investors will come here to Canada only because they can make money. They're not given to altruism. They're here to make money. They're no better at mining potash than Saskatchewan people. How can they be? There isn't any potash where they come from. We are the experts at potash. Now, if it's our potash, and we are the experts, and profit can be made from it, otherwise people wouldn't be coming in. Why shouldn't that profit belong to Saskatchewan people?
Your investment.
Devine insists it makes good economic sense to sell shares in Saskatchewan's mines to countries which use Saskatchewan's potash.
That's good business. That's good for Saskatchewan people. We get all the tax. We get so much a ton no matter who owns it. We get the royalty. And we'll have a company that is internationally known with its head office here in Saskatchewan. And the mines are here. They can't move them. I mean, we got complete control of them.
Romano sees it differently.
If you allow the straight, ordinary rules of the marketplace to decide economic activity and social benefits as a result of that economic activity, this region has everything stacked against it. We have a small population, we have large distances to go to market and to get our products and supplies, we've got a tough climate, and we have no political power in the national context.
I've noticed in Saskatchewan, as an outsider, that people, I think, tend to be rather unduly pessimistic about the place. I think it has tremendous potential. There is all sorts of investment opportunity here. And I think that an open economy in Western Canada stands every chance over the next, decades of becoming an enormously prosperous and exciting economy.
But Alan Blakeney says what Grant Devine is doing is dangerous.
You can't sell off your birthright and not be worse off. I don't think anybody who owns a string of farms and decides to sell off quarter section after quarter section after quarter section and spend the money for current purposes. And that's what the government of Saskatchewan is now doing. It's not as if they were taking those assets and creating another asset. They're not doing that. The money, once it's acquired, is gone. And any farmer who does that and sells off a quarter section every 6 months will soon have very little.
Depending on who you believe, Premier Grant Devine is either selling out a legacy or building a bright new future for Saskatchewan. But there's no question the for sale signs are up, the bids are coming in, and Devine has staked his own political future on the results. In Regina, for The Journal, I'm Sasha Petrusik.
That documentary was produced by The Journal's Fareed Barsoom. Just today, the Saskatchewan legislature began debate on a bill that would give the Minister for Privatization sweeping new powers. In the days ahead on The Journal, Bill Cameron reports on the economic plight of Nicaragua after the long war with the Contras. Susan Harada has the story of the cocaine trade in Peru. And Jerry Thompson on the fabled city of Venice, the battle to save it from the sea and itself.
This Friday, we will have interviews from Moscow about the historic election that's shaking the Soviet status quo. That's our program for tonight. Thanks for being with us. I'm Barbara Frau.
I'm Paul Griffin. Good night.